The train screeched into the station like a wounded animal, spitting out a rush of cold wind that cut through the stale smell of the carriage. People avoided eye contact because in New York, eye contact is an invitation to trouble. But Trouble had just walked in wearing a $3,000 suit and an ego even more expensive. He saw the man in the hoodie immediately. He didn't see a human being, saw a problem. "You're in my seat," the businessman said, his voice smooth like silk wrapped around barbed wire. The black man looked up slowly, eyes steady, not moving an inch. "That's funny," he replied quietly, "because I didn't know the seats on a public train had your name on them." Passengers shifted uncomfortably. A young woman in the corner bit her lip, her phone hovering just above her bag ready to record. The businessman's smirk widened, but it wasn't the kind that came from humor. It was the kind that came from knowing you could get away with anything. The train lurched forward. Outside, neon light flickered across their faces, washing the scene in brief flashes of color. The businessman leaned closer, invading the other man's space. "You people never learn, do you?" he whispered, loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. The hoodie man's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Not yet. His fingers rested on his knees, relaxed but too relaxed. Like a tiger before it springs. Someone coughed. Someone else muttered, "Just leave him alone." But the businessman ignored them. He'd already decided this was his stage, and humiliation was the act. "What's in the bag, huh?" he pressed, nudging the small duffel with his polished shoe. "Something you stole?" A ripple of discomfort spread through the carriage. The air felt heavier, thicker. The black man finally looked him dead in the eye, and for the first time, the businessman blinked. "You really want to find out?" the hoodie man asked softly. The train roared into a tunnel, plunging the world outside into blackness. For a moment, it was just the hum of the rails and the sound of two lives colliding in a space too small for both. The businessman chuckled, but it cracked around the edges. "Yeah, I do." A faint metallic click came from inside the duffel, barely audible over the train's rumble. And though no one in the carriage knew it yet, that sound had just shifted the night into something far more dangerous. The businessman didn't notice the sound, but the man in the hoodie did. His fingers had brushed against the zipper, just enough to let his hand slide inside. The bag wasn't big, but what rested inside could decide the direction of the next 5 minutes and maybe the rest of their lives. The businessman tilted his head, studying him like a hunter sizing up prey. "What's the matter? Cat got your tongue? Or maybe you don't speak proper English." The insult hit the air like a brick. A few passengers gasped softly. One man sitting by the door shook his head and looked away, the way people do when they want nothing to do with trouble but can't pretend it's not happening. The hoodie man's lips curled into something between a smile and a warning. "I speak it better than you," he said slowly. The businessman's eyes narrowed. "Is that so? Where'd you learn it?" "In prison." That was it. A sharp intake of breath from the young woman in the corner. A low "Jesus Christ" from the older man by the window. The tension had evolved from discomfort to danger, and it was changing shape fast. But the hoodie man didn't flinch. He just reached into his bag, pulling out nothing threatening. Just a book. It was old, its leather cover worn and frayed at the corners, the kind of thing you imagine finding in a library that smells like dust and wisdom. He set it in his lap without a word. The businessman blinked, confused. "What is that supposed to be? Your defense?" "A bedtime story." The man in the hoodie opened the book slowly, revealing crisp, well-kept pages covered in neat handwriting. "This," he said calmly, "is the list of every man who thought he knew who I was before I proved him wrong." A laugh bubbled out of the businessman. He looked around as if to say, "Can you believe this guy?" But no one laughed with him. The train rattled through the dark tunnel, the lights overhead flickering for just a moment. The man in the hoodie leaned in slightly. "And I'll let you in on a secret. That list's about to get a new name." The businessman's smile faltered. "You threatening me?" "Not at all," came the reply, calm and steady. "I'm just telling you what happens next." The businessman's jaw tightened. He straightened his tie, trying to regain control. "You think you're tough, huh? I could have you arrested for threatening me." "Hell, I could." "Funny thing about that," the hoodie man interrupted, voice low enough that only those nearest could hear. "You can't have me arrested. Because you don't outrank me." The businessman froze. For a moment, his eyes flickered with uncertainty, like a flame caught in the wind. "What's that supposed to mean?" he asked, the edge in his voice sharper now. The hoodie man didn't answer right away. Instead, he reached back into his bag, and this time, his hand emerged holding a leather wallet. He flipped it open with practiced ease, and for the first time, the silver badge caught the light. The businessman's face drained of color. A murmur rippled through the carriage. The young woman's eyes went wide, her phone now fully out and recording. The older man by the window muttered, "Holy hell," under his breath. "Special Agent Marcus Hale," the hoodie man said clearly, his voice carrying enough authority to cut through the train's clatter. "Federal Bureau of Investigation." He let that sink in before continuing, his tone colder now. "And you just picked the wrong guy on the wrong night." The businessman's lips moved, but no words came out. Hale didn't look away. "Do you know what harassment looks like under federal statutes? Do you have any idea what happens when you target someone based on race in a public setting? Because I can show you exactly what the paperwork looks like from my side of the desk." The businessman swallowed hard. "Tu didn't mean, yes, you did." Hale cut him off sharply. "And you thought you'd get away with it because you've gotten away with it before. People like you always do. Until you run into someone like me." The train slowed as it approached the next station. The businessman's eyes darted toward the doors, as if planning his escape. Hale noticed. "Go ahead," he said evenly. "Step off this train. I'll make sure the uniformed officers at the platform know exactly who you are and what you've been up to tonight. I can have you in cuffs before your overpriced shoes hit the sidewalk." The businessman's breathing quickened. His gaze flicked to the passengers, but instead of finding allies, he found only cold stares. No one was going to save him. The train jolted to a stop, the doors sliding open with a hiss. The businessman hesitated, then stayed put. Smart choice. Hale leaned back, his badge still visible. "Good. Now sit there, be quiet, and maybe by the time we reach Grand Central you'll have figured out what respect looks like." The rest of the carriage was silent. The young woman lowered her phone, but kept it in her lap. The older man by the window gave Hale the faintest nod. Even the hum of the rails seemed quieter now. The businessman stared at the floor, his confidence gone, replaced by something far uglier: shame. Hale closed his badge case and slipped it back into his bag, returning the book to its spot on top. His eyes scanned the carriage, landing briefly on each passenger. No one looked away. The train plunged back into darkness, the flickering lights casting fleeting shadows across Hale's face. He leaned his head back against the seat, the tension in his shoulders easing just slightly. But his eyes remained open, watching. The train rattled on, carrying with it the heavy silence of a room where something big had just shifted. Passengers didn't need words. They could feel it in the way shoulders uncurled, in the way eyes stopped darting nervously toward the businessman. Hale didn't speak. He didn't need to. But inside, the gears in his mind were turning fast, because this wasn't just a random trip for him. 3 hours earlier, he'd been in a safe house in Queens, seated across from a man whose face was covered in tattoos that told the story of every crime he'd ever committed. That man had given Hale a name that was supposed to be meeting a courier on the very train he was on now. Hale's job was simple: observe, collect, and intercept before the handoff happened. He wasn't supposed to interact with anyone. He wasn't supposed to blow his cover. And now, thanks to one arrogant businessman, every set of eyes in the carriage had seen his badge. His cover story as just another commuter had been shredded like paper in a storm. Hale glanced toward the far end of the carriage, where a lanky man in a brown leather jacket had been sitting since he boarded. The man's head was down, eyes on his phone, but Hale knew better. He'd clocked him the moment he stepped on. No bag, no briefcase, no signs of travel. Just waiting. And if Hale was right, the confrontation a moment ago might have rattled more than just the businessman. The train shook as it sped along the tracks. The businessman shifted in his seat, clearly wanting to disappear. Hale didn't give him another look. His attention was already back on the mission. Focus, he told himself. Forget him. Stay on target. But as the minutes dragged, he could feel the shift. The man in the leather jacket was watching him, now stealing glances between fake scrolls on his phone. Hale reached into his bag again, pulling the book back into his lap. He opened it, but he wasn't reading. He was watching. The leather jacket guy's left hand dipped into his coat pocket, fingers moving slightly. Hale recognized the motion, instantly checking the weight of something metallic. A gun, or maybe a knife. Either way, not good. The train entered another tunnel, plunging the world into dim light. Hale's muscles tensed, his mind calculating distances, angles, and timing. If this guy made a move before they reached the next stop, there'd be no avoiding a scene. And then the businessman shifted again, pulling out his phone. Hale caught the glow of the screen, the flick of a camera lens being activated. "You really want to take my picture?" Hale asked without looking up. The businessman froze, halfway through raising the phone. "It's a free country," he muttered. "Sure," Hale said, still not looking up. "But it stops being free when you're taking pictures of a federal agent during an active investigation. You want to go down for obstruction of justice too." The phone vanished back into the businessman's pocket so fast you'd think it burned him. The leather jacket man had seen it all. His gaze was locked on Hale now, his posture just a hair more defensive. That was good. It meant he was nervous. Nervous people made mistakes. The train began to slow, the next station coming into view through the window. Hale's pulse picked up. If the courier was boarding here, this was the moment. The doors hissed open. Passengers stepped off, others stepped on. And then, just as Hale had been told, a small man in a navy coat entered, carrying nothing but a plain brown envelope. He didn't look like much middle-aged, thinning hair, a nervous twitch at the corner of his mouth. But Hale had been doing this long enough to know that appearances lied better than people. Navy coat sat 2 rows ahead of leather jacket. No greeting, no acknowledgement. But Hale saw the way leather jacket's foot began tapping slowly, rhythmically. A signal. Hale's fingers curled slightly on the book. Navy coat reached into his jacket. His hand emerged holding the envelope. He set it on the seat beside him, almost casually. Leather jacket stood. That was the moment Hale moved. He was on his feet in 2 strides, the book hitting the seat as his free hand came up, gripping leather jacket's wrist before it could close on the envelope. The man reacted fast, twisting, shoving, but Hale was faster. "Sit down," Hale ordered, his voice low but commanding. Leather jacket snarled. "You got no idea who you're messing with." "Oh, I've got a pretty good idea," Hale said, his other hand fishing the badge back out just enough for the man to see. "And here's the thing you're done." The businessman in the corner was frozen, his earlier arrogance replaced by something closer to fascination. He was watching a real federal takedown play out not 6 feet away. Passengers gasped as leather jacket tried to yank free, but Hale's grip was unyielding. He used the train's sudden jolt to push the man back into the seat, one knee pinning him in place. "Envelope," Hale said. Navy coat hesitated, his eyes darting to the doors. Hale didn't look away from leather jacket, but his voice carried enough steel to make Navy coat flinch. "Now." Slowly, Navy coat slid the envelope across the seat. Hale grabbed it with his free hand, slipping it into his bag in one practiced motion. "You just bought yourself a conversation with some very interested people," Hale told him. The train rolled into the next station. This time, Hale moved quickly, flashing his badge toward a pair of uniformed NYPD officers waiting on the platform. Within seconds, leather jacket and navy coat were being hauled off in cuffs, their protests echoing back into the carriage. When the doors closed again, Hale was still standing there, breathing steady, scanning the passengers. No one said a word. Finally, he picked up his book, sat back down, and let the train carry him forward. The businessman swallowed hard. "So, that's what you do." Hale looked at him, his expression unreadable. "That's what I do when I don't have time for people wasting mine." The man dropped his gaze. For the rest of the ride, he didn't say a single word. Hale leaned back, the city lights flashing across his face. He wasn't smiling, but somewhere inside, he knew at least one person in that carriage might think twice before opening their mouth the next time prejudice tried to crawl out. And that was enough. The train's brakes screeched against steel as it pulled into Grand Central, the final stop for most of the passengers. People gathered their belongings, glancing at Hale with a mix of respect and caution. The businessman didn't move right away. He sat there, staring at his hands, looking smaller than when he first stepped on. The $3,000 suit still fit him perfectly, but it no longer looked like armor. Hale stood, slinging his bag over his shoulder. He didn't intend to say another word to the man, but as he stepped into the aisle, the businessman's voice stopped him. "Wait." Hale turned slowly. The man's throat bobbed as he swallowed. I'm sorry." The words came out clumsy, like they'd never been spoken before. "For what?" Hale asked, his tone flat. The man's gaze flickered. "For the things I said." "I didn't." "Yes, you did." Hale cut in, not cruelly, but with a clarity that left no room for argument. You meant every word in that moment. And here's the thing. I'm not interested in apologies you make because you're embarrassed. I'm interested in the ones you make because you understand. The businessman's shoulders slumped. He nodded once, not trusting himself to speak again. Hale held his eyes for a moment longer, then turned away. Think about it, he said over his shoulder, stepping off the train. The vast concourse of Grand Central was alive with motion tourists craning their necks at the ceiling, commuters rushing for their connections, the echo of announcements bouncing off marble and stone. Hale walked through it all, blending back into the crowd like he'd never been noticed at all. But the night wasn't over. At a quiet corner exit, an unmarked black SUV was waiting. Inside, two agents sat with laptops open, their faces illuminated by the pale glow of data feeds. Package secure, one of them asked as Hale slid into the back seat. Hale handed over the brown envelope. Untouched. Two suspects in NYPD custody should be an easy handoff to our people in the morning. The agent in the passenger seat whistled low. Heard you had a public moment on the train. Hale gave a humorless smile. Let's just say someone tried to make me their evening entertainment. And you flashed the badge? Had to. Situation went sideways. The agent nodded. Well, you got the job done. But as the SUV pulled into traffic, Hale stared out the window at the city lights and thought about the businessman's face, how quickly superiority had crumbled into shame. He'd seen that transformation before, but it never quite felt like a victory. Because prejudice wasn't a battle you could win in one night. It was a war fought in small, endless encounters, most of them unseen. Hours later, Hale was back at the field office, writing his report. The words came easily at first: facts, times, actions taken, but when he got to the additional observations section, he paused. The cursor blinked at him. He typed, observed and addressed incident of racial harassment during assignment. Intervention necessary to prevent escalation and maintain operational readiness. Perpetrator demonstrated immediate behavioral change in presence of authority, but long-term impact uncertain. He stared at it for a while, then added, sometimes the mission isn't just the mission. He signed off, closed the file, and leaned back in his chair. The office was nearly empty, the hum of computers the only sound. He thought about his father, a man who'd worked 3 jobs and still been followed around in stores because of the color of his skin. He thought about his younger brother, pulled over twice in 1 week for matching a description. And he thought about how, even with a badge in his pocket, people still saw what they wanted to see first. Maybe tonight had made one man think twice. Maybe it hadn't. But Hale knew he couldn't control that. All he could do was show up, every day, and refuse to let silence be the easier choice. The next morning, Hale stopped at the coffee shop near his apartment before heading in. He was halfway through stirring his cup when someone stepped up beside him. It was the businessman. He looked different and daylight less polished, more human. No tie, no smugness, just a man holding a paper cup with both hands like it might steady him. I wasn't sure I'd see you again, he said quietly. Hale sipped his coffee. This city's big, but it's not that big. The man hesitated, then said, I thought about what you said. About understanding. And I'm not going to pretend I've figured it all out overnight, he admitted. But I realized, nobody's ever called me out like that before. Not really. And maybe I needed it. Hale studied him for a long moment. Self-awareness is a start, but it's not the finish line. The man nodded. Yeah, I get that. I've got work to do. Hale didn't offer a handshake, didn't give him the comfort of absolution. Instead, he said, then go do it. The man gave a small nod and left, disappearing into the morning crowd. Hale watched him go, unsure if he'd ever see him again. But for the first time since last night, he allowed himself to believe that maybe, just maybe, something had shifted. That night, in another part of the city, a train screeched into a station. Somewhere, 2 strangers sat across from each other, their paths about to collide in ways neither could predict. And maybe, if one of them remembered the weight of a look, the tone of a voice, or the sting of being wrong, maybe the next collision wouldn't leave scars. Because that was the truth Hale had learned after years in the field. Laws could change behavior, but only people could change hearts. And sometimes, all it took to start that change was refusing to look away. The mission was over. The work never was. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.